This is James Rodriguez with JT, and I think that Frank is just an amazing guy. Here in my Uber cab, headed to the airport, and thinking of Pest Geek, one of the best shows in the universe. Thank you.
We're going to be discussing Aprehend biological bedbug control with the creator, Nina Jenkins, Senior Research Associate at Penn State University, all on this edition of the Pest Geek Podcast.
Pull out your hose and grab your can. We're about to integrate another Pest Geek Podcast. Hi, everybody. Frank Hernandez here, and welcome to the Pest Geek Podcast, bringing you the latest information on pests, products, and politics from today's leading industry sources to help you start, manage, and grow your pest control business.
Hey, welcome back. Welcome back to another edition of the Pest Geek Podcast. I am your host, Frank Hernandez, here every day discussing all things pest. And I've got on the phone today Nina Jenkins. She is one of the researchers that worked on this project to create Aprehend. And we're going to be asking a lot of questions about this product. And I really am thankful for getting her on the phone and being able to discuss this. But before I do that, I want to let you know about Pest Geek Podcast. Make sure you're following us on Twitter. You're following us on Facebook group. We got a Pest Geek Podcast listeners Facebook group to discuss the issues on this podcast that we're having and to bring new ideas to the table, discuss things openly, that we can do it in an environment we can understand each other about what is going on in our industry. So go ahead and join us. Also, we're on Facebook and we're on the web, pestgeekpodcast.com, and also on YouTube. And without further ado, I want to welcome Nina Jenkins to the podcast. I got on the phone Nina Jenkins, the developer of Aprehend. Nina, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
So I discussed briefly, gave an introduction, I think a couple of weeks ago, about a month and a half ago, on the new development of this biological product called Aprehend, and you worked on this project. But before I get into that, give people a little bit of background about you. How did you get into entomology? How did you arrive here in this current, what you've been doing and how long you've been doing this?
So I've been working on research and development of biopesticide products for almost 30 years. It started off in the UK and England, my home country, when I just finished my bachelor's degree in applied biology and got involved with an organization called CAB, an organization that works with member countries from the old Commonwealth of the United Kingdom to assist with agricultural problems and to conduct research to address issues within those countries. And that organization had just got a massive project to look at the possibility of developing a biopesticide for controlling locusts and grasshoppers in Africa. And it was a very well-funded project that had been a collaboration between a number of the large overseas aid organizations, including USAID, the equivalent from the United Kingdom, Canada, Germany, and the Netherlands, and Switzerland. So I was lucky enough to get a role in that project where we were looking at developing a fungus that could be sprayed and control locusts and grasshoppers in the desert. And this was something that was considered to be practically impossible back in those days. That was about 1991, I think I started there.
Gotcha.
And we actually set up a program where people in Africa, the locust control officers and the scouts, would go out into the field and look for dead locusts or grasshoppers, and they would actually send them in to us in Cabby in Ascot, where I was working. It's in Berkshire in the United Kingdom. And we would take those dead insects and try to isolate fungal pathogens from those insects. We paid them $5 a piece. So we got a massive, massive collection of moldy grasshoppers, if you like, which we isolated the fungi from. And then we conducted a screening program to see which ones were good at killing locusts and grasshoppers and which were not so good. So we sort of narrowed down our selection of which ones we could use to develop.
So sorry to interrupt you. So for me to get an idea, because a lot of my audience does not understand biological control. We deal a lot in chemical. Very few people deal in biological control. So what you're saying is you didn't develop a product and then tested it in the field. You went out in the field and tried to isolate different pathogens that you found on them to see if they actually died by one of these. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha.
So, every animal in the world has, is susceptible to some kind of disease or diseases. And, you can utilize that against them, particularly for pest insects. This is, it's quite a neat concept because these diseases tend to be very specific, at least to insects, but often to a particular group of insects.
Gotcha.
So when we were working on the locust and grasshopper project, most of the pathogens that we isolated, or the diseases that we isolated, only killed locusts and grasshoppers. They didn't even kill beetles. So it's a fascinating concept that you can develop a product that's very specific to the target pest. And in an environment such as the desert, which is a very fragile ecosystem, something like that is extremely valuable.
Yeah, what was the impact? Why was the locust something that you were studying to control? What was the economic impact, or what was going on at that time that this needed to happen?
So, yeah, that's an interesting question. So there had just been a massive locust plague, I think, it was the mid-1980s. And a locust plague is something that goes on over a number of seasons, even a number of years, where locust populations build up to a level where they become gregarious. They form these massive swarms that fly, land on farmers' crops and completely decimate the field. Obviously they're reproducing. The females lay eggs in the soil. When it rains, those eggs hatch, and you have another generation of locusts growing up. They start off as what they call hoppers, and these hoppers, they can't fly until they're adults, but the hoppers just march across the desert, again, eating everything in their way. And this doesn't happen that often. They reckon on average it's about every 10 years. So once a decade, there is the propensity for locusts to become gregarious and initiate these sorts of outbreaks or plagues. And there's a lot of research that goes on to try and prevent this. So they have scouts that go out if they see large numbers of hopper bands. The idea is that you spray them with chemicals as soon as you see them to prevent them from developing to adults and then taking flight. But because a lot of those areas in the desert are extremely inaccessible, then, this can happen without people really realizing that numbers are building up and can become critical. So there had just been this massive outbreak, this massive plague. Millions of dollars were spent by the Food and Agriculture Organization on chemicals to spray in the desert. Not only was it extremely expensive, but they also realized that by spraying this level of chemical in a fragile ecosystem such as the desert was actually causing some ecosystem damage. And they really wanted to look at what alternatives there could be. And hence the impetus for driving the funding of this project to look at an alternative that would be more specific and less damaging to the environment.
Yeah. How long did it take you from that issue of happening to, isolate the fungus, get the grasshoppers or the locusts in, isolate, test, and get this product to market? I mean, what was the time frame of that?
Yeah, so it was long. So the project was actually funded over a period of 12 years, 4 3-year phases, as they called it. So
Gotcha.
The first 3 years, it was really about, doing that exploration, identifying what potential diseases could be utilized, developing the formulation technology, and basically demonstrating the proof of concept that you could do this. And one of the key things here, which it also applies later when we come to the bedbug work, is that we formulated the fungal spores. These, you can think of fungal spores like seeds. When you add water, they germinate.
Gotcha.
And that's when they become active. So what we were doing, well, we were formulating these fungal spores in oil. There was no water involved. And you can spray oil in the desert using ultra-low volume application equipment. And that's how they apply chemicals. So we were really feeding into the same application system as was commonly used for chemicals. But by formulating the spores in oil, we would prevent them from germinating. But the other key is that the desert is really dry, and, fungi usually need water in order to be able to germinate and grow. But using this special formulation or this combination of oils, we were able to ensure that the spores would survive in the desert, but then when they came into contact with the locusts and grasshoppers, they would be triggered to germinate, just utilizing the moisture exchange from the locust's body, and then penetrate and grow inside the insect. So I guess the first 3 years we were demonstrating that was indeed possible. We'd selected a short list of isolates that we were going to develop further. And then in the second phase, we started doing sort of small scale field testing. And we were looking at how to grow that fungus so that we could produce it economically. We set up a production fungus factory, if you like, in Benin in West Africa, and started producing for the project use. So we would send out formulated spores from the fungus factory in Benin, and they would be used in Niger and various areas around West Africa. And we also did some work in South Africa as well on brown locusts. So we were developing this. We went through each stage of the project. By the time we got to the end of phase 3, which was like 9 years in, we realized we were ready to transfer that technology to a commercial organization, because it was not possible to maintain this, in perpetuity using public money. It was all public money, all development money from these governments. So there was a decision made that, if this was going to be able to stand alone and work as a product, then it had to have some kind of commercial value, and we would transfer that technology to preferably an African company, who would then run with it. And we selected a company that was based in South Africa, who already had another fungal product for controlling nematodes. And we worked with them to set up their production for our fungus, which was called Mesorhizium. And the product was called green mussel. So we transferred certain secret technology to them on a licensing agreement and assisted them through the final phase of the project up to this 12-year point, to ensure that they were ready and set up and had registrations in the relevant countries to actually send this product out when required.
Dealing with the issue of when we're dealing with biological products, to help people understand that, because we it's a very sensitive. When I bring this up in a lot of places, that even with pest control operators, the whole idea or the issue with dealing with biologicals and the public perception of it and the public image of it, how people think of this. We use, in my field, I use a lot of it with mosquito control and with spinosad and certain biologicals that we can use that are labeled for our application. But how difficult is that to deal with that in the public perception of you're applying a biological product? And a lot of questions have come up to me about the concerns of biologicals in this. And since I know they're highly targeted because they only attack certain species, they won't deal with everything else. How incredibly difficult or challenging has this been as a researcher and a developer to deal with this from the PR perspective?
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you bring this up, because often we have heard these questions before, and people have said, well, do you think the public will really accept having a fungus sprayed in their bedroom? And it doesn't sound nice when you put it like that, but it's a biopesticide, and I think that's a much better word. It's still completely accurate, but this is a biopesticide, and I use phrases such as a natural disease of insects, and it's surprising, actually, the amount of public traffic that we get through our website and the inquiries that we get indicate to me that the public are actually incredibly enthused about this concept. And I think you can't, obviously it's difficult to generalize across the board, but I have not had any questions from the general public about, doesn't this seem a little bit disgusting, or I'm really not happy about that. All of the inquiries that we've received through our website from the general public have been, please tell me how I can get hold of this. And yes, everybody wants to spray it themselves, and we've already made the decision with Aprehend that we only sell to licensed pest controllers, even though that's not on our label. We only sell to licensed professionals. So it seems to me that mostly the general public are very receptive to this product. But I think professionals, the PCOs, are asking the right questions. They should consider whether they are happy and confident about spraying this kind of product in the environment. And I always welcome those kinds of specific questions, because I feel like we've done the tests and the evaluations that we can give the correct information to them.
Gotcha. So one of the questions that I've gotten most often, and one of the concerns is, what is the risk of a product like this with people who have like immunodeficiency problem? We're spraying it around their bed, around their bedroom. It's in. What is the risk of this, of causing any issues or problems, either respiratory or immunodeficiency, or with open sores? Those are the kind of questions I'm getting. I've been asked a lot of, that's what comes up the most. What is that as far as a response to that kind of concern?
And I understand that completely. So there are two things that you bring up there. One is the question about, can this fungus infect a person, even if, taking it to the extreme of somebody who has open sores and is immunodeficient. And then the other element is, will people react to this in a certain way? And by that, I mean it's a sort of an allergenic response type thing. So there are those two very different elements that need to be considered. So first of all, the fungus itself cannot grow at human body temperature. So it would really, it wouldn't even struggle. It cannot grow at what are we? We're 98, to use your unit of measurements, Fahrenheit. We're 98 degrees Fahrenheit. The fungus cannot grow at that. It will not germinate, and it will not grow at that temperature. So the likelihood of it actually infecting a person is extremely low, just because of the temperature differential. But on top of that, it is a specific fungal disease of insects, not of people. So we don't really have the nutritional makeup that would sustain that fungus to grow on the human body. With respect to allergies, yes, there is a risk, but it's almost entirely respiratory, which is why our label says that PCO should wear full respiratory equipment when applying this product. That's for two reasons. One is the formulation that we use is entirely oil-based, and it's petroleum distillate-based. So you don't want to be breathing in atomized petroleum distillates when you're applying this product. But inside those droplets, there are also fungal spores. And just like pollen or wheat flour, people can develop an allergenic response to the spores because they're made up of proteins, and certain people have more or less of a propensity to develop an allergenic response to anything that's proteinaceous, particularly if it's inhaled. So wearing personal protective equipment will prevent any issues with that. And once the product is sprayed and it's applied to the surfaces where you're applying it, that's where it stays. It will no longer become airborne. So we've developed this formulation so that it sticks very well to every surface that it's sprayed on. And it can be removed by contact by a human, whether it's clothed or just bare skin, but it's not going to cause an allergenic reaction through contact. It's only through inhalation that there's a risk of that. So on top of that, as you've probably seen, we recommend spraying in areas where people don't come into direct contact. And with respect to bed bugs, that's also entirely logical. We can apply to the areas we know where the bed bugs will walk, and that's not where people are coming into direct contact. We don't spray on the surface of sofas or couches. We recommend you remove the cushions and spray in that inner seating area and then replace the cushions. That inner seating area is where the bed bugs are most likely to be hiding out, possibly down into the depths of the sofa. But if you've sprayed that perimeter barrier, they will have to cross the barrier in order to get up to take their blood meal. So we like to hide our barriers so that people don't remove them inadvertently just by brushing against them. And the barriers last for 3 months as long as they stay in place. So there's a number of reasons why we try and make that strategic application somewhere away from human contact as well.
So in the case of the application, what kind of surfaces do you apply this on? Is it on smooth surfaces? Is it on rough surfaces, impervious surfaces? Does it work on any surface? How would they actually apply this product?
Yeah, so pretty much any surface is suitable for the application of Aprehend. The surfaces that we don't recommend are silk, just because of the formulation and the fact that the oil-based formulation will show up on silk. So best to avoid that. And then carpet is a bit of an issue. And I mean, carpets come in all different shapes and forms, and deep pile and, not deep pile and so on. And we find that if you spray Aprehend on carpet, it tends to get lost in the pile and it's not so effective. So a bedbug can walk along a carpet that's been sprayed by Aprehend. It may pick up enough spores for to control it, but it's not as reliable as less rough surfaces. But fabrics are excellent. Vinyl baseboard, painted wood or plasterboard. Do you call it plasterboard?
Yeah, drywall. Drywall.
Drywall. Yeah. Sorry, drywall. Yes, painted drywall. All of those surfaces are perfect surfaces for the application of Aprehend, and the spray band of formulation will, it'll lay down this residual barrier that will stay there and just wait for a bedbug to come along and cross it.
Gotcha. So any place now, as far as an integrated pest management approach, where they're applying synthetic chemicals, will the synthetic chemical destroy the pathogen or the bacteria or the fungi in this case?
Great. So so first of all, if a chemical has been sprayed previously and dried on a surface, and then you then go in and spray Aprehend, we're evaluating pretty much any chemical we can come up with, including raid for ants and cockroaches, because we know that homeowners could have sprayed on these surfaces or whatever. And so far, we have not found a single product that affects Aprehend as long as it was sprayed first and is dry.
Gotcha. So the idea would be that if you're doing you're doing drawers, which you could do this in case, we find that the bed bug is in all kinds of places.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we look at when we're doing a bed bug service is, well, what about shoes? What about articles of clothing that we're treating this room, and sometimes we get into this clutter situation and with hoarders and and ask you another question in the type of an environment has how much field testing has been going on with situations that are very difficult versus an ideal situation where you treat a hotel room or something that is organized. What has been your feedback or your testing on this in those types of environments that are very difficult, where we can't really, the person is not going to do prepping. That's been a challenge.
So it is, and we're very excited because our recommended protocol is minimum prep, actually. So we have not been able to do controlled trials where we monitor absolutely everything and count things. So all of our feedback has been from our licensed PCO users who have said, hey, I'm going to try this and I'll let you know how it goes. Now, we've had phenomenal feedback, and we have heard amazing stories of people going into, cluttered environments where they really didn't know where on earth they would spray a chemical, and they just went ahead and sprayed Aprehend barriers wherever they could get to and achieved amazing results. And it really, the application of Aprehend, we think is going to require a little bit of a change in attitude and strategy about what you're doing to control the bed bugs. So, we understand that in a cluttered environment, bed bugs could be harboring in shoes and in cardboard boxes with the rest of the clutter and all kinds of areas. But wherever they are harboring, they have to find blood meal. And our advice or our strategic approach is to look at the areas where that human hangs out and try to lay down protective barriers around each of those areas. So we're talking obviously beds and sofas and chairs. And so if you can first of all protect those areas by spraying if the bed has a box spring, it would be the bottom of the box spring around the perimeter where the dust cover is stapled to the frame of the bed. Okay. Now we know that bed bugs live inside that box spring, but they have to come out for their blood meal. We also know that they like to harbor in those little spaces between the staples where the dust covers are attached. But if you spray the barrier around that border, any bed bug coming out of the box spring has to cross the barrier, and any bed bug harboring in that area, will either get hit directly or have to cross the barrier. Then bed bugs coming from outside, if you spray a barrier around the side of the box spring, that's exterior perimeter, anything climbing up the box spring will have to cross the barrier. And I guess what I should say here is that Aprehend, because it's these spores, these tiny seeds, you can think of them as, that are stuck to the surface. When a bed bug crosses our barrier, which is only 2 inches in diameter, it doesn't have to stay in contact for a long time. So unlike a chemical where the bed bug is required to absorb sufficient toxin from that sprayed surface in order to become affected, with the Aprehend barriers, because these are tiny particles, it's more like when you go to the beach and you walk on the sand. It only takes a couple of steps when you have wet feet before the sand particles are completely stuck to the bottom of your feet. And you could walk another mile, but you wouldn't have any more sand stuck to the soles of your feet. It just takes those 2 steps, and it's exactly the same for our barrier. We've got millions of tiny spores laid down in the barrier. The bed bug crosses it. The spores are instantly attracted to the bed bug cuticle, the skin, and that's where they stick. So by applying the barriers, we know that the bed bugs will then become affected.
Gotcha. Because one of the questions that I did get was, what is the exposure to this, and how, if does the insect need to stay there 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes? It's basically as they're walking across, they're picking up these spores on their body, and there's no amount of time that they need to be there for them to pick that up. Gotcha. Okay.
Exactly. Right, and then they go on and they take those spores which are stuck to their body back to the harborage. Now, if you've got a situation where they're harboring together in a little cluster, those spores do transfer very easily from one bed bug to another. So it's a direct contact transfer. It's not like coughs and sneezes where you would transmit the disease through your own infection. But by direct contact, they can share these spores around, and that does give you an additional effect, actually.
Okay,
the other thing they do is that they groom, and we see, when we've looked under our super powerful microscope at the university, a scanning electron micrograph, we've found that often the spores are germinating and penetrating directly through the eye. Which is kind of gruesome, but that's how it works. You know, they're grooming their eyes and things, and the spores lodge in that compound eye, and they penetrate directly.
Wow, it's almost like science fiction to watch something like this happening. I mean, I experience it on the natural level when I see my fruit on my trees getting mummified and by this little fly that's damaged my entire fruit. Yeah. And so I'm visualizing this happening as you're talking to me. But yeah, it's fascinating to see how something like this would be a tool that revolutionizes what we do as pest control people. One of the things that we're remember that PCPs are going to have a hard time adapting to using one product, and so they're going to be using pyrethroids. They're going to be using in the traditional. Some people use heat. Some people will incorporate vacuuming. Do you recommend that in as far as treatment? And is it beneficial to use it by itself? Is it beneficial to traditional? We're dealing with an untraditional product in our industry, and we're using traditional methods to try to control it. And I always seen there's a conflict when we try to do that, where if there are more bed bugs available and we're not picking them up and we're not vacuuming them, and the person is actually sleeping in the bed after it's going to cause them to want to go all over the place and attack that person. Where the person would want to sleep in another room while this is getting taken care of. And I see a potential problem with people saying, I don't want to sleep on the bed until this is solved. So they're going to just sleep on the couch that wasn't treated, and the bed bugs are going to move over there and not. And so all of these issues are coming up, and we're discussing them, and I'm looking at all this. Is it best to use this product by itself without vacuuming, without doing all of the cleaning, without doing the steaming, without incorporating all those things into it? No. I mean, walk us through all this.
Yeah, so I see Aprehend very much as part of an IPM approach.
Gotcha.
So while you could use it in isolation, I think it's much better if you incorporate it with other methods. So the methods that we like the most, and it doesn't mean that this is exclusive. First of all, Aprehend is not labeled for spraying on a mattress, and that's fine. Okay. You know, we don't want you spraying it on the mattress, and I really believe you don't need to. So what would you normally do with a mattress? There's encasements. Great. I think that would be an excellent option. If you spray bedlam on mattresses normally, that's absolutely fine. Carry on doing that. If you use steaming or vacuuming, these are also great tools as well. So as long as something is done to address what's going on in the mattress in combination with our treatment, then everything is good. So there needs to be something done with the mattress, and that's really a matter of choice. I can't think of one that I would say, oh, well, don't do that one. They are all absolutely fine. Cryo, anything.
So the idea is we're adding this as an integrated management tool, because I know what the thinking of some people is going to be. Hey, I don't have to prep anymore. I don't have to vacuum. I don't have to crack and crevice. I'm just going to go ahead and just use this product because, it's a one solution product. And I'm afraid that that might get lost, and people are, hey, we're not getting any result. The product stinks.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Yeah.
work because, we applied it, and if it's supposed to have all these spores, and it should work by itself, it shouldn't need anything else. And I think there's the risk where, we're going to run into, and I want to address all those issues while I got you on the phone, because then I know it's going to be terribly hard to get you back again.
Yeah, absolutely. So no, I don't think PCOs should rely entirely on Aprehend. And by the way, we do have a series of very short training videos on our website, which anybody can watch. They're all up there, and they go through things like, first of all, the overall concept, and then how to use our spray gun equipment, because this is a unique piece of application equipment that allows you to spray ultra-low volume rates of pure oil formulation. Remember, we're not adding water to this. So you have to have our specialized spray equipment, and there's a whole 9-minute video on how to use that spray equipment. It's hands-free. It has a rechargeable battery. You don't have to plug yourself in. You wear it around your waist, so it's very convenient, but it's different. So we have an entire video dedicated to that. We then have one on ideal preparation recommendations for homeowners, and really it's tidying up more than anything. So we don't want this massive, disruptive, emptying out all of the drawers, putting all of your possessions into black plastic bags. We actually don't want the environment disrupted to that level, but we would like the clutter on the floor to be picked up ideally, because all clutter, as you know, provides a random harborage. So if you've got large numbers of random harborages, it's going to take longer to bring this infestation under control. I think it can still work as long as you've applied the barriers strategically, and we'll go on to, every single area that I think you should apply a barrier ideally. But, the disruption to homeowners is really just, can you please tidy up? And that's far more attractive than the alternative, which is quite disruptive. And then the final video is that basically takes you through the strategic application. Think like a bed bug. Where are they going to be heading? Where do I think they are? And how am I going to intercept them with a barrier?
Let me ask you this, because you just mentioned something. You don't want the disruption.
No.
Why particularly don't you want that disruption?
Because then it makes it very difficult to know where the bed bugs are, where they're coming from, and where they're going to be going. So, disrupt people's normal living arrangements, and everything then changes. So really minimal disruption is what we want, because I think everybody who's dealt with bed bugs if you go into a home before that disruption happens, you can see what's going on. You can tell where the heavier infestations are. You can see that they're spotting around light switches or outlets or whatever. So you can kind of tell how far this infestation may have spread. And, obviously only with heavy infestations this becomes very obvious. But I think most PCOs who deal with bed bugs become very familiar with the areas where the bed bugs are hiding. So let's not disrupt those. Let's keep them where they are so that you can then apply the best strategic barriers.
Yeah, see, that right there is a one of those debates that the industry is having, where we tell the customers to prep, they don't prep. Personally, I've never asked a customer to prep. We handle all that when we're on site for that reason. But that's a huge contention issue with people in the industry saying, well, they won't prep. We have to work all around all this disruption, all this, especially with people who have a lot of stuff. They're hoarders.
Yeah.
And that's been a huge, we could start World War IV with that one. To have that debate, it's going to be one of those that go down in history. But that's good to know that, hey, leave it alone. Try it this way. It also creates less tension for the tech and for the homeowner to, did I do it right or didn't I do it right, and why I didn't do it and why it wasn't done at all. And people just, some people leave and techs will show up and it isn't prepped the way they want and they just leave. And so that's been a huge problem. Anything that I didn't touch on that you feel that I should have asked or that everyone needs to know about this?
Okay. Well, so we talked about alternatives for the mattress treatments. You can go around baseboards with our product on the top of the baseboard where there's the junction with the wall, but at the bottom of the baseboard where there's either carpet or hard flooring, we don't recommend you spray Aprehend. So carpet we already went through, but hard flooring, then it becomes a slipping hazard because there is a proportion of the oil that stays there even after it's dried. So we recommend a dust product for those areas. So there's another integrated approach that we would recommend. We think dusts work very well. You can apply these in the areas where Aprehend doesn't work so well. But when it comes to electrical outlets and things like that, you mustn't spray inside, obviously, but you can put a barrier right the way around on the wall, and anything emerging from the electrical outlet will cross that barrier. And if you have a very cluttered room and there's lots of boxes with stuff in them, there's no reason why you can't spray around the outside of a cardboard box. And then anything that's inside the box has to crawl over the top of the box and down across the barrier, and it will have become infected. So there are lots of areas where you can say, okay, well, this is way more clutter than I would like, but I can spray a barrier around here and a barrier around here. Yes, you'll use more product in a cluttered environment if you're doing a very thorough job, but the most important thing is to get those key areas where you know the human will sit and or sleep. And yes, you mentioned the problem with people moving out of their bedrooms. That is a problem for Aprehend because you really do need that human law, which is an unpopular term, but nonetheless it's real, in order to bring those bed bugs across the barriers and out of their hiding places. So that's our recommendation. The product's going to sit there and do its job for 3 months, and we think pretty much any infestation can be brought under control if you've applied the barriers strategically. And we hope to get some real publishable data out of this. We're working with various people to try and get some replicated trials done. I don't know if you're familiar with Jeff White has just applied our product in a very challenging situation. We're looking forward to getting his feedback, and we're trying to set up some controlled trials where multiple units are treated, where we can get some sort of statistical data that we might actually be able to put up on our website and publish. But at the moment, everything is by word of mouth, and we have not had a single unhappy customer. So that's been the most amazing thing to us.
Excellent.
The most serious thing that we've had is some of the batteries that we sent out with our compressors appeared not to work. So we now QC all of our batteries. We get them from China, so every battery is QC'd before we send it out because we've learned from that mistake.
No, that's excellent. And let me ask you this: so as far as feedback from the people that are buying it and using it in the field, what specific data? Because I know that you need really good data and specific data. What data do you want back from them as far as information, video, audio, transcripting? I mean, what kind of stuff do you need from the field? I guess,
well, we're always happy to hear anybody's opinion and just their general feedback. But in order to actually produce some data, we need traps. So whether they are climb-up interceptors or little volcano traps or anything like that, if we have some measure of the level of infestation prior to treatment, and then sometime after treatment, usually 2 weeks is our magic window. So we recommend that people go back after 2 weeks and see how this is working, and usually they're blown away by the efficacy. So there's a 2 week period where there may still be activity, but when you hit that 2 week mark, usually you can't find a single live bed bug. But then 4 weeks down the road, we would like to know that the interceptor traps are coming up empty and there really is no live activity. And, proving a negative is one of those impossible things, but we would love to know that we've actually achieved eradication rather than just a lot of death of bed bugs. Because that's easy to see, that's easy to measure, but the actual eradication is the most important thing, as we know. And so yeah, we'd love to have that information, but it's probably more effort than any PCO do, going about their daily lives once put in, and we understand that. So, we haven't asked many people to provide that. The other thing I wanted to touch on was heat treatment. You mentioned that. So if you heat treat after applying Aprehend, it will kill the spores. But we do think that Aprehend would work really well in conjunction with heat treatment as well, because there's, however well you do your heat treatments, there's always the chance of a failure just because one bed bug or two bed bugs went deep into the wall cavities and you were unable to control that escape at that point, and they will come back in. And also the possibility that there is a source of bed bugs outside of the home, work or school or whatever, that is responsible for reintroducing bed bugs. So if you did a heat treatment and then you apply Aprehend just in a very minimal strategic application around the frame of the bed or the box spring, the back of the nightstands, maybe around the sofa, so that any bed bugs that escape the heat treatment or were introduced after the heat treatment will become affected by the fungus when they cross the barrier seeking their first blood meal after that event. And that will prevent a reinfestation from occurring, and it will protect that heat treatment for 3 months, by which time, hopefully, everything is already under control.
Right. So there is no need to reapply this. I'll touch on a couple of things you just said. There's no need to reapply this after 3 months once you've achieved eradication. It's not a maintenance product unless you know for sure there's constant reinfestation by bringing something in, or like in a case of a hotel room where there's constant new people coming in. How would we use it? Is it recommended for a prevention treatment or no? Just when bed bugs are identified and spotted?
So for preventative, I think it's only sensible for high risk areas. So hotels that experience frequent introductions would do well for having this quarterly treatment, and shelters and these sort of even in multi-family housing where you have maybe a background infestation in the entire building, a preventative treatment in one apartment could prevent that apartment from having continual incursions from the neighboring properties if they are not properly addressed. And that's a whole other nightmare story, of course, that really should be dealt with by the management company, but often is not.
Yeah, that's we can start another war with that one. We pulled our hairs out with one of the things that hurts the most in dealing with the human issue is that the people that really need this type of service the most really are the ones who can least afford it. It's been a contention issue with me where we're trying to find a solution that is low cost. Because we can't go in and spend, 4 hours in a room with this particular client because they can't afford it. And the management company and most buildings that we deal with put it back on the tenants and say, well, it's your problem. If you brought it in, you got to solve it. And then we don't know who started it, but somebody threw the first punch and we have no idea how it got this far. But being able to have something that you can potentially put down in several units as and doing it as part of an IPM and inspection and a reduced cost is what I'm looking at to bring that cost down to make it accessible to the people who can least afford it. I think that's my biggest thing with this product is that it could allow us to do that. With the issue of temperature, if we do a heat treatment, or what in places like around the country where heat is a big problem, where like in Arizona, how much temperature, if we're doing a heat treatment and we take a temperature sampling of that room, how low does the temperature need to get before we apply this product?
So about 100 degrees, so hand hot.
Gotcha.
The spores will survive at that temperature for a limited amount of time. So, we think that if you conduct a heat treatment, you pack up your gear and then you go with your infrared temperature monitor, you can usually find areas that have reduced to that temperature more quickly than others, and I'm sure heat treaters know exactly which surfaces cool down more quickly. So you would probably start with those surfaces, and then the ones that remain hotter longer, try and do those last. But it really is a minimal treatment, just to protect from from reincursion from anything that you missed. So it's a minimal treatment around the beds and the sofas. Should be possible at the end of your heat treating job without having to wait too long for things to cool down. But with respect to heat again, of course, you've got to transport this product in the heat of Arizona in midsummer, and that's also something that's going to have to, be a priority for any PCO that decides to adopt Aprehend. Is that we recommend that you take only approximately the amount of product that you would need for that day, and that you take it into every job, whether it's a bed bug job or not, because leaving it in your van or your truck or your car in bright sunshine, in many places, even up here in Pennsylvania in the summer, it gets extraordinarily hot in a vehicle if it's parked in the sunshine. So we know that will significantly damage Aprehend. It doesn't matter if it gets freezing. We've had a few calls of people saying, I left it in my truck and it went down to -20. That is okay. We actually long-term store our active ingredient in a chest freezer, so that's not a problem. But high temperatures are. So repeated high temperatures, long-term high temperature is an issue. So I often ask people to treat Aprehend as if it was a fresh egg that they were going to eat in 2 days' time. If they've left it in their van for 2 days, and are they really going to eat that fresh egg? If that is of concern to you, then probably you might have killed Aprehend in the same way. So treat it like you would treat a fresh egg.
So let me ask you this: as far as storing it, most people, most PCOs work in out of their home. Storage wise of this product in the home, so at room temperature it'll be fine, or does it need to be kept? If you're going to buy, in other words, I bought a what portions does it come in? Like, how big is the product? Is it how many ounces, or how does it come?
It's a small bottle. It's a 16-ounce bottle, and that's the only size that we're selling currently. And that's sufficient to do 2 or 3 bed bug jobs, depending on the level of activity that you actually see. But let's say a medium infested 2-bedroom apartment that doesn't have too many items of furniture that are suspicious to you, that require barriers, you're going to use maybe 4 ounces. So it's quite a small.
It's very little.
The spray atomization is very fine. You really do apply a very small amount. And our gun takes a 3-ounce pot. We've never known anybody use more than 3 ounces in any bedroom, any single room, even if it's heavily infested and cluttered.
Okay, so when they're ordering it fresh, pretty much. If they're transporting it, packing it in what? Cooler and dry ice would be a good idea?
If you are going to leave it in your truck, yes. If you're comfortable traveling in your truck and then you take it into, another reasonable environment where people are comfortable, then the product will travel with you perfectly well. But you could, yes, absolutely use just even a freezer pack and a little what do you call them? A cooler box. Yeah.
Yeah. Eskimo coolers. Yeah. So the idea would be that you're ordering this product when you're needing it for that job and scheduling it, not a product you want to keep on the shelf.
Well, no, we have a 1-year shelf life. So as long as you keep it in a reasonable room environment, so probably it's air conditioned, or you can put it in the fridge.
I got you.
You have a good year's worth of use out of that product. But we do we do on-demand delivery, so we're trying to compete with Zappos with our service. So if you order awesome. 16 ounces from me today, I will have it out of our factory by the end of the day. UPS will come and pick it up, and it will be on its way to you.
Excellent. No, I was just had a visual of putting that in the refrigerator and, honey, what is this? Those are just my spores.
It's fine, really.
That milk tastes terrible. Geez. So yeah, that you probably want to have a separate fridge for that, or keep it in a storage unit where it's out of the way, so nobody accidentally says.
Yeah, you
interesting.
should. You should. Yes, don't keep it in your home refrigerator. And we do not sell product with a childproof cap. It was not deemed necessary by the EPA. So another reason not to keep it in your home fridge.
Gotcha. All right. Well, as far as contact info, how should people order it, contact you, send you feedback? What is the best way to get a hold of you?
Well, so we have a website. It's www.aprehend.com, and Aprehend has only one P. We have a contact us form, but you can contact me directly at Jenkins@conidiotech.com, and Conidiotech is a little bit tricky. It's CONIDIOTEC, conidiotech.com. So you can write an email, but we don't have the prices of our product on our website because, as I said, we get a lot of traffic from homeowners onto our website who are very keen to have this product used, and we like people to be able to price their jobs the way they price their jobs without homeowners knowing how much they paid for the product. So I think that's normal for every other product. So that's why we don't have our price list up on our website, but we will send it out immediately, and basically we'll sell direct. But if you have a Univar rep that you normally order from, Univar are also supplying our product.
Excellent. Yes, we have done down here in Miami.
And we try to pride ourselves not only in speed of delivery but also in product support. So even if you did order through Univar, we'd love to know that you're one of our customers, because we are available on the phone. I should give you our phone number. It's 1-800-891-8610. We talk to all of our customers on a regular basis. We're always happy to answer any questions. And also, if we get a hit on our website where they say, hey, look, I live in Erie, Pennsylvania. Who of my pest controllers locally uses our product? If you are on our database, we will be providing your details to them so that they can contact you and say, hey, you use Aprehend, and that's what I really want to be used for my bedbug job.
No, awesome. I really do appreciate this. Appreciate the time and talking about the product and the honesty and transparency. I really do appreciate it. And I know my audience will too. And if anything comes up where you're getting a lot of data and we want to share the data to come back on the show and then discuss it maybe a year from now to know, hey, this is what, it's been happening and this is really exciting.
I'd love to.
So it would be great. So thank you so much, Nina, for being on the show. And hopefully I will have this podcast up for you tomorrow. So it will be on the air tomorrow.
Okay, good to speak to you.
And we'll talk to you later. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Well, I hope you have enjoyed today's podcast. Don't forget to listen to Nick Madero, The Pest Life, on Wednesdays. Until tomorrow, have a pestacular day.
Thank you for listening to the Pest Geek Podcast. If you have enjoyed the Pest Geek Podcast, please give us a rating, write a review, or subscribe to the channel. You can join the Pest Geek Society by visiting pestgeekpodcast.com. Thank you for listening. See you next time.